Hey everyone, Miv here, and welcome back to my Completionist playthrough of Icewind Dale. Purist style, insane difficulty, all that. Now first off, in between episodes, I've done a few things. I deposited the animal pelts in our new room at the Evening Shade, made 2 trips to Kaldahar Pass to clear it out of items that we left behind previously, made the sails, including the spare high-quality dagger we still had and Galburin's old sling, pocketing around 100 gold for all that. Not much perhaps, but it's honest work, and it will all add up in the end. I've also visited Girth to sell him the necklace from last episode and to entrust him with Aiden's legacy ring for safekeeping and preserving that part of Kaldahar's history, getting another 135 gold in the process, increasing our budget total to 1353 gold at the end of the day. And these trips back to Kaldahar Pass basically was over a day's work, basically, because of the 16 hours it takes to go there and back. So 32 hours in total we had to spend to earn that juicy Chandreto Golderu. And now some of our party members have begun tiring, but we will give them their well-deserved rest soon. Oh yeah, and the reason I stashed the pelts into a container is because we of course don't need to carry them with us. We don't want them to clutter our inventory and weigh us down. But they were placed specifically into a container to not only be organized, but primarily because items in containers don't despawn, whereas items left on the ground disappear after a maximum of 48 hours of you leaving the area, and sometimes even quicker after 24 hours, depending on a few factors. And those timers get reset when you visit the location again, but of course for any items you want to safely store, a container is necessary. The only exception are quest items, which never despawn. But yeah, we will occasionally deposit some stuff we don't want to carry into that drawer or crate in the inn. That will be our storage, I think. But anyway, now the time has come to finally progress the main story and meet the final VIP of Kaldahar, Arundel.
Welcome. I've been expecting you for some time now.
And of course I will conduct this conversation in such a way to give us the maximum amount of lines from him. So here, of course, we have heard about him plenty of times, but in order to get an extra line, let's respond with this. Expecting us? How's that possible? We've only just recently arrived in town.
Yes, well, bad news travels upon swift wings in these mountains. I know about your expedition from Easthaven. I know why you are here, for it was I who sent for you.
And now we'll have a couple of possible conversation responses to what he says, based on a few variables. And I think this is all kind of lesser known because it's not anything groundbreaking. It all leads to the same response from him, but it is interesting. This second one here is based on whether we have heard about him or not. So of course we have the conversation option, then you must be Arundel. But if we hadn't, we would have an option saying like, who are you, old man? Something like that. But this first one is really interesting because it's based on the intelligence of the talking character. And these intelligence requirements are a little bit too high because Rintar, even with his above average 11 intelligence, he is at the top end of what is still not enough to understand more. And basically, if you have between 12 and 15 intelligence, the character can kind of figure out what's up, but is still unsure and forms his response as a question. And then if you have 16 intelligence or more, the character will be able to piece together a few clues to arrive at the conclusion that he must be the archdruid that sent the messenger to Easthaven, that he must be Arundel. But yeah, since this leads to the same place anyway, we of course know who he is. We can figure that out. So we'll say, you must be Arundel.
Yes, I am Arundel, known to some as the Archdruid of Kaldahar. Though I invite you to dispense with the formalities and just call me Arundel, plain and simple. Titles tend only to serve one's own vanity and aren't really of much use in this small mountain community.
Very well. Tell me, Arundel, do you know anything about the reports of disturbances in these mountains?
Yes. It was I who sent Hallister to Easthaven for help. His death weighs heavily upon my conscience. For not only was he a student of mine, but he was also a friend and trusted companion. He will be missed, as will Hrothgar and the other members of your expedition.
And before we progress here, that's a very interesting choice of name. because Halaster, spelled with a single L, Halaster Blackcloak, is a very well-known figure in the lore, the Mad Mage, residing in his lair in the Undermountain. But anyway, here we are kind of presented a choice about what to ask exactly about the Avalanche or Hrothgar, but his answer is basically the same in both cases, but the one about Hrothgar is a little bit more elaborate, and this was something that I would naturally want Rintar and our party to ask. So, you knew Hrothgar?
Let us say I knew of him. Word of his deeds has reached even our small, isolated town. I also know that his death, tragic as it is, was no accident. Someone or something did not want your party to reach Kuldahar alive.
Tell me, Arundel, what travels this town?
There are malevolent forces at work in these mountains. Forces that seek to undermine the delicate balance we druids have struggled to preserve for centuries.
I love this moment in the conversation. This is where things get dark and serious. The atmosphere becomes more ominous, and it's like there's an ill wind blowing outside. The whole feel changes brilliantly. It starts a little bit in that his previous line, but here especially when he talks about these malevolent forces. Oh yeah. Malevolent forces. Could you be more specific?
Oh, would that I could. The face of the evil remains hidden, but its presence is unmistakable. All about us, there are signs of its damaging influence on the balance. The unnatural weather, the recent rash of abductions, the numerous monster sightings in the pass. These all point towards something sinister. Even the animals sense something is amiss.
And here we'll be able to ask about all of these particular issues that, of course, we've heard the townspeople talk about a lot, but now we can hear someone who presumably knows even more about these troubles. Can you tell me more about these disturbances?
I can only tell you of what little I know. Which disturbances would you have me speak of?
Tell me of the unnatural weather.
The weather in these mountains has always been harsh, but never like this. Fierce storms ravage the valley without warning, often lasting for several days at a time, before vanishing as quickly as they come. It is barely midway into leafall, and yet the pass to the south has been snowed in entirely. Weather such as this is most unnatural. Nature presents itself in cycles that are predictable by those who know what to look for.
That is a little disturbing. And in order to always get back to the choice of topics, we have to ask him the same thing.
I can only tell you of what little I know. Which disturbances would you have me speak of?
Tell me about the recent rash of abductions.
Oh, yes. Terrible, terrible. At first, there were tales told by travelers of companions disappearing into the night, snatched up from their bedrolls as they camped along the narrow trail that winds through the pass. We did not think much of these tales, for such occurrences are not unheard of in these mountains. Then one night, Conlan's boy Sheemish went missing. The next morning, the whole town searched for the boy, but turned up nothing. He was just gone, vanished without a trace.
And these two responses lead to the same response, but of course we will say this. That is strange indeed.
The boy was just the first. Several nights later, another disappeared, Megan Potts, the local midwife. Her husband Khalil was grief-stricken to the point of madness. With barely a word to anyone, he snatched up his sword and marched off into the darkness after his wife. No one has heard from him since. And now, the abductions are occurring more frequently. Iden, the old innkeeper from the Evening Shade, was taken only 3 days ago.
Well, let's not get into the details of this story.
I can only tell you of what little I know. Which disturbances would you have me speak of?
Tell me about the monster sightings.
As I'm sure you have noticed by now, there seems to be quite a few goblins about. It is not usual to see so many of their kind roaming the mountains so late in the year. It is almost as something has drawn them out of their holes, like carrion birds drawn to the scent of death. As if the goblins weren't enough, several giants have been spotted moving through the pass in groups as large as 10. That many giants traveling together in such numbers indicates they are organized and are acting with a singular purpose. I have watched their activities closely. Their tracks trace a deliberate pattern through the mountains, almost as if they were on patrol.
That is disturbing indeed, and we of course have already been victims of these giants and their work they put into creating that avalanche earlier, of course.
Another thing. While I was out scouting the giants, I discovered other sets of tracks I have never encountered before. What manner of beast made them? I could not say.
So yeah, even more, yet stranger creatures are present in the area. But yeah, now that we have discussed these disturbances, we can move on with the conversation. You spoke before of balance. What sort of balance are you talking about?
The balance. It is what the druids of Kuldahar hold sacred and have worked to preserve for generations. It is all around us. It is us. Balance is the harmony that is achieved when man and nature learn to coexist, no longer contending with one another, but coming together as two parts of a whole.
And I love his little exposition about that because we have heard about, balance, many druids speaking of it in these games, but there's never really a clear explanation of what they really understand under that term. So that's really cool. And here, when it comes to our responses to his exposition about the balance, there's this mocking one, of course. You take this nature thing seriously, don't you? This one is not available to rangers, druids, or elves. What rangers and druids have available to them as a special response is one of kind of agreement and understanding. But all of these conversation options lead to the same place anyway. And we will actually go with this one. What can you tell me about the druids of Kuldahar?
Balance is the belief that this town is built upon, the very reason for its existence. Druids of Sylvanus, the Oak Father, have tended this shrine since the beginning. For hundreds of years, we have striven to achieve the ideal balance between man and nature. When settlers finally came to this pass, it was the Archdruid Tolban, my predecessor, who laid the foundation for the relationship that led to the birth of this community.
Shrine? What shrine are you talking about?
The Great Oak, the massive tree that stands above us, around us. It is a holy shrine to Sylvanus, for it was he who planted its seed when Faerun was first born. It is a testament to the raw power of nature, a monument to its ability to thrive in the face of adversity.
And here, of course, Asathi is carefully listening to every word that Arundel utters. She is captivated by all of the stories and all the information she knew deep down to be true about the magnificence of the Great Oak, but this is just fascinating to her especially. Of course, our whole party is very interested about this and can feel the, grand presence of the oak, of course, but she has that special connection and special purpose regarding the Great Oak, and to save this shrine, of course, is her purpose here.
Thanks to Tolban, the Great Oak we Druids called the Kuldahar, and the town that has come to be known by the same name, have together become a monument of even greater significance. A monument to the balance.
And so it turns out that the Great Oak they called the Kuldahar, and then the town just inherited that name. And here we can ask about Tolban, and I've only just recently discovered that this doesn't work for some reason in the Enhanced Edition. What we should have available here is a slightly differently worded response, because we, of course, have seen that statue in the middle of town of Tolban, and it seems like the script is exactly the same as it is in the original game, but somehow in the Enhanced Edition this doesn't progress the global variable for us to know, at least vaguely, about who Tolban was. But I'll just show a screenshot from the original game, how it would be worded. We can actually reference that statue. But who is this Tolban? We can just ask for more info.
Tolban was the catalyst for the transformation of the shrine from a sacred grove to a thriving community in which man and nature exist as one. At first, settlers were kept away from this site, The Druids of old saw outsiders as an affront to the sanctity of the tree and its sphere of benign influence. They erected thorny brambles to keep intruders out, and used their powers to frighten away the men and women that came to build homes in a place they felt was obviously so close to the gods. It wasn't until the succession of Archdruid Tolban that things changed. Unlike his predecessors, he believed that the settlement of the Valley was not only inevitable, but it was actually the will of Sylvanas. He also believed that we had been wrong in keeping the settlers away, and that the Oak Father had intended people to share in the miracle of the Great Oak from the beginning. When Tolban finally became Archdruid, he formed a plan to fulfill the destiny of this sacred site by bringing about a union between the Great Oak Shrine and the settlers. It was this union that the Archdruid Tolban believed would achieve the harmony that we had been striving for generations. The harmony between man and nature. As it stands, Kuldahar is a monument to this vision. The tree and town exist in a natural symbiosis, where it is next to impossible to tell where one leaves off and the other begins. But now, the balance is threatened.
So yeah, Tolban, rightfully having that statue erected in his name, in tribute to what he has done to this place, opening it up for the gifts of the Great Oak to be able to provide some good and be enjoyed by more ordinary people, not just the druids. Other people can revere nature too. But anyway, now that we have exhausted all of the different topics, we can move on with the conversation. So now, I see. What are we to do about all this?
I fear that if we do not soon discover the source of these disturbances, then all that we have worked for will be destroyed. The evil that has come to these mountains infects this town like a disease. As its people suffer, so does the tree suffer from the sickness that attacks the balance, corrupting it with its very presence. Already, the circle of warmth that radiates from the Great Oak has begun to recede.
So of course, we've heard about this, and this is what Asathi dreamed of. That this is why her dreams were so disturbing, because she felt that there is something wrong with the Great Oak withering inside under this corruption.
We were forced to abandon the outlying farmsteads as a result of the shrine's fading power. If we do not take action soon, I am afraid that the life-giving warmth will cease altogether. Both the Great Oak and the town, nestled within its roots, will die. This must not happen. We need your help.
And of course, our resolve will be strong. We all want to help in preserving and saving this town. But in order to listen to a bonus line, one additional line, perhaps, it wouldn't be Rintar, but perhaps in the back of our party, some rumblings can be heard about maybe having some doubts about our capabilities, that we would like to help, of course, but don't feel like we are able to.
I understand, but the circumstances leave you little choice but to get involved. I needn't remind you that the avalanche that wiped out your expedition, the one that you were fortunate to survive, has blocked the way back to the 10 towns. As I mentioned before, the path south has been entirely snowed in. There is no other way out of this valley. Your fate and the fate of Kuldahar are intertwined. You must discover the source of the disturbances and restore the balance, or we shall all perish together.
So yeah, this is kind of like, no matter how you roleplay this whole situation, you are going to have to, even if reluctantly, you are going to have to try to, help Kuldahar in this struggle against evil. But of course, here Rintar and our party will be steadfast in that kind of purpose. Their resolve will be strong, and they will say, "Very well, together we shall root out this evil that threatens this town. What must we do?"
I suggest you begin by investigating the Vale of Shadows. It is a place not far from here. Darkness has always clung to the floor of the small canyon, as if the light of the sun itself were wary of the place.
And here, only now, it is that the Vale of Shadows is placed upon our map. Myrek, of course, mentioned its location. He ventured there himself, but this is why he said that we needed to consult with Arundel to actually know how to safely reach the Vale now that, various passages are dangerous and roamed by monsters and whatnot. But yeah, you have to speak to Arundel to even get the location to that place and to be able to progress.
There are a number of ancient crypts hidden within the shadows of the Vale's narrow cliff walls. There have been rumors of the dead awakening and emerging from their dusty tombs to walk once more amongst men. If these rumors are true, then I suspect that whatever is responsible for disturbing their slumber may be behind the other disturbances as well. Go to the Vale of Shadows, learn what you can about the happenings there, then return here and we shall discuss a course of action. Good luck, and farewell.
Alright, so now we finally have a clear next destination. We know what is our next objective. And now it will be appropriate to discuss Conlan's response about the Vale of Shadows, which I mentioned last episode. He says the Vale reeks of evil and that people who go there are never heard from again. So he's not surprised that Arundel directed us there. That kind of response should only be available now when talking to Conlan, but you know how it is, we discussed that last time. And also, since I always need to reference Baldur's Gate, of course the Icewind Dale vendor Jolov had in his stock the Staff of Arundel, and I of course will hide its description because of the spoilers it contains. But now if we talk to Arundel again, there's a little bit more to discuss, so let's do that.
Understood. Please, you must make haste. Time works against us. We must discover the source of this evil before the balance is altered irrevocably.
Of course, we can ask him again about various things. Then, of course, if you wanted to see, I skipped over that kind of a little bit too quickly, if you wanted to read the journal update. But here, now, in that situation where we didn't have a druid to solve Gareg's headache problem, if you remember that poor ogre in the tower in the Kuldahar Pass, Arundel is the character who could now help us out in that regard, providing that same recipe for a cure. And since that whole bit is voiced, I'll insert it here. And this is it. I thought you should know. I came across an ogre in the pass outside of town. This ogre, who calls himself Gareg, complained to me about a sharp pain in his head. Is there something you can do to help him?
Interesting. It is impossible to determine exactly what ails him without examining him myself. But I do know of an herbal remedy that may ease his suffering. If you like, I could tell you the recipe so that you may help him help himself.
I'm not going to use this one, although it is quite funny. But very well. What is this recipe?
Tell him to gather a handful of frost berries that grow throughout these mountains. He must squeeze the juices from the berries into a pot of boiling tundra grass. Once mixed, the entire brew must be consumed in order for the pain to subside.
And here, of course, we can agree to relay him that info and complete that quest in the same manner, but with the info from Arundel instead of our own druid. But anyway, back to the episode. Alright, and of course, we will do what we can. I'm just going to show the upstairs area. It looks very nice. Of course, beautiful interiors as always. There's nothing here now, but there will be a reason to come here later in the game. And now, since we know about the Vale of Shadows being our next target, let's head over to the tavern to ask a little bit more about any information we could find out still from the townspeople. And it is going to be the case that we will get some valuable clues and also something more tangible. So yeah, of course, as we introduce ourselves again to this townsperson, now we are going to have a line of basically 3 rumors that we will be able to kind of cycle through, but there's a little something interesting in there too. So now we can just ask generally about the Vale of Shadows. And of course he mentions Myrek and his brother Silas that make their pilgrimages there every year. Of course we ran into Myrek. We can relay our tale here. And here we kind of encounter that rumor we've heard at the bar, I guess, in those tavern rumor section. Yeah, that it is not the place for the living, but we have no choice. We have to go there. This is just so funny. Never been to the Vale of Shadows myself, but I've heard it's covered in shadows. Wow, such a well-written line. This guy is a real detective, being able to suspect that this name referencing some shadows, perhaps. But yeah, it's like Twilight there all the time. No good will come from the living setting foot in the Vale. Let evil feed on evil. That's what I say. But yeah, any more information would be helpful. Yeah, and he's going to say that we might have more luck with other townsfolk if we ask them, but we can actually go through all of Jesus. Speaking is hard. We can go through all of the rumors by asking the same townsperson. So let's just go to the next one. Now, of course, when it comes to the crypts of the Vale of Shadows, we can ask more about that. And he's going to say this. Just last month, Girth was going on about one of the tombs said to be in the Vale of Shadows. Says one of them's the tomb of Kreselak, the Black Wolf. That's going to be an important name. Kreselak. Don't think I've ever heard of him. Terrorized this region years ago, he did, with a whole legion of soldiers, shamans, and priests under his banner. And now, this is going to be interesting. This would be everything if we spoke to this guy about this rumor with certain classes. But there are two different follow-ups to this. First one is available to the warrior classes, so paladins, rangers, and fighters. And this is what we're going to explore here, and we will go back to the cleric version of the follow-up soon. But yeah, that's a good-sized force for this region. It would take a man of some strength to lead such a band, especially if it had spellcasters in it. Yeah, rumor has it he had a sword as large as a man, able to cleave enemies in half. Not only that, but it had some enchantment that helped Kreselak ward off the cold, but not the chill of death, I'll wager. And this is all cool clues that we will find out more about in the future, but yes, that sword will come into play, let's say. Well, a good blade can be the best right hand a leader can have. It can turn a capable leader into a champion of the people. And now this is interesting. Look, if you're making your way to the Vale to try and help us here in Koldahar, there's no reason you should have steel that's any less than Kreselak's. Here's a small token you can use at Conlan's smithy if you need to purchase a better blade. Take it with my good graces. That is very nice of this townsperson. He is going to give us a garnet gem that sells for 105 gold at Girth's place. Your token is appreciated. Thank you. You can thank me by being cautious and staying alive. If you have to cross paths with the dead, do it from a distance, with a lot of arrows. Most of them can do horrible things just by touching you. This is also another valuable clue. A lot of the undead we will meet in the Vale of Shadows have some sort of on-hit property. Usually they can paralyze, or they can debuff our Thako, or disease us. So, yeah, a lot of nasty things they can apply when attacking in melee. And then the third rumor here we can speak about. Do you know anything about the creatures that inhabit the Vale of Shadows? Saw one of those huge worms, carrion crawlers, once, by the road leading to the Vale of Shadows. When one of the townsfolk spotted it, it was feasting on a caravan guard that had stepped out to relieve himself of his traveler's burden. Must have been quite a shock to him, but not for long, fortunately. What did you do? Me and some of the men got together and drove that damn thing off with arrows. Those crawlers can paralyze a man with their tentacles. And if they do, it's a long, horrible death watching them eat you as you lie there, helpless. Yeah, that's a terrifying thought. And another good clue, carrion crawlers indeed can paralyze, and then, of course, you are helpless, being auto-hit by their attacks. So this can be a death sentence, of course, for melee combatants especially. But now, just for be a little bit more realistic, let's actually talk to a different townsperson, this time with Galburin, and we will explore some of those rumors. Here I'll just click through this because this is exactly the same, but now when we talk about Kreselak, there will be a different follow-up if we talk with a cleric. So when he talks about that legion of soldiers, shamans, and priests, the cleric can ask, priests? What kind of priests? Priests that would make the dead rise, friend. Bone dancers, I think they called them. That's another reason the Vale of Shadows should be left alone. I doubt Kreselak rests easily in his crypt. Bone dancers. That would make them priests of Miracle, Lord of the Dead. The bone dancer's duty lies in raising undead guardians, especially for tombs they don't wish defiled. I imagine Kreselak's tomb is well guarded by undead. Look, if you're making your way to the Vale to try and help us here in Kuldahar, there's no reason you shouldn't be outfitted properly, especially if you'll be facing anything these bone dancers have raised from their graves. Take this small token with my good graces. Maybe you can purchase something from Auric at the tower or Fiddlebender to make those undead think twice about tangling with you. And yeah, so a really nice follow-up. We got another Garnet gem this way, so we have two, being able to sell them for 210 gold in total, which we'll do soon. But yeah, this is really cool. We can kind of get both, and it was always the case. This is not any enhanced edition shenanigans, oversights, or anything like that. It was always possible to get both of them. Very cool follow-ups. You can see how good-hearted these Kuldahar townspeople are. They are rooting for us. They, of course, hope we can really help them, and they wish for our success and survival. Now let's quickly step into Conlan's shop. Just making some preparations for our upcoming journey to the Vale of Shadows. Let us replenish our supply of darts. They have been serving us well this playthrough for a little longer than I thought they would. But yes, now let's distribute them a little better, and let's reorganize our inventory a bit while I'm thinking about it. Here I think we'll just do something like this. Just give Natty Master all of these throwing axes for now, because Morning Stars are quite heavy, but this will be the primary weapon of choice for the upcoming adventure for Rintar, who will now be able to proficiently wield this Morning Star as he just completed his specialization in this type of weapon last episode. And another thing to consider that I thought about was buying a certain scroll for Iris to perhaps gamble scribing again. But I ultimately decided against it, and I will elaborate on that in the next episode. But now, before we end this one, I wanted to present one more thing. Here we will quickly rest before our adventure, but it's not our final rest. We are going to prepare for our journey a little bit more, but here as we rest, we will unlock what I have prepared on Asathi. Basically, we have recently unlocked something that will be an important part of our preparations from now on. Something that we will use before venturing out of town for our next adventures. So, behold, our secret weapon, Goodberry! And if you're familiar primarily with Baldur's Gate, you're probably bewildered and think I'm joking, but you heard me right. Goodberry in Icewind Dale is a surprising, very useful pick. It is the nutritious fruit of longevity. As the old Faerunian saying goes, a good berry a day keeps the doctor away. But now, to really discuss it, Goodberry in Baldur's Gate is, of course, terrible, because it creates 5 separate berries that each heal for 1 HP. A complete waste of your round in combat and a complete waste of your time in general. However, in Icewind Dale, a switcheroo was done that makes all the difference. Here, the spell creates 1 item, a handful or a clump of berries that heal for 5 HP. Basically a mini healing potion that you can take with you. And it's still not going to be as impactful as a real potion in combat, of course, where in most cases you'll want the real deal, restoring 9 or more HP. But for out-of-combat purposes, it is perfect, especially in a game like Icewind Dale. Considering the format of adventures in this game, where during long dungeon crawls, you go from fight to fight, suffering some hits in the process as enemies keep chipping away at your health, this is the perfect way to get yourself topped up, cure those smaller wounds before they add up to something more serious, and keep on going. And this is precisely the same role that the food rations from Icewind Dale 2 fulfill in that game. They are readily available in large quantities, but only heal for 3 HP, which is usually too small to make any real difference in a fight, but you can keep snacking on them in between battles as you go around and explore the map to heal up to full over time before the next encounter comes along. This also lessens the need to memorize some backup healing spells, allowing more freedom to go for other options. And of course in Icewind Dale there's also spontaneous healing, but that's a different story. And now, when it comes to this expiration date they mentioned here, I don't think it ever worked like that in any version of the game. And basically, in classic Icewind Dale, they were essentially permanent, just like they are in Baldur's Gate. And in this version of the Enhanced Edition, they are bugged, despawning prematurely, but I fixed them, so we'll have no problems there. And of course, with these good berries, you have to use your discretion. I usually make 1 or 2 sets of them. Basically, you can rest up for a day before the journey and prepare some snacks to go in the meantime. 1 or 2 sets is a good spot in my experience. Not too many, but a nice resource that does help and is worth the little extra prep time that goes into it. So now we can cast some good berries and demonstrate. Yes, this will help us be nourished. Delicious and nutritious good berries. Oh yeah, so of course maybe inspired by, that berry recipe that we were reminded of, that we recommended to Gareg. We can now conjure up some other berries that will help us as well in our survival in our next adventure. And yeah, this is, I am going to cast these good berries and memorize spells that we will need in our next adventure, kind of doing all that in between episodes. But right now, I think this is going to be a good spot to end this one, because of course, starting from the next episode, we will begin some serious adventuring, and the proportions of conversations to battles are going to shift dramatically. So thank you for watching this episode, and I'll see you next time.